You, when you're using thinking to relate to the teaching, you'll be confused and you won't understand, right? Why? Because the thought process is producing you as an identity that is unreal, right? How can something that is unreal hear or see or understand what is real? Can't. So when you're operating from a thought process, what you'll say is, I don't understand. Because what you're identifying with can't understand because it isn't real. It's not awake, it's not alive, it can't understand anything, it can't see anything, it can't do anything. That's what we mean when we say there's no doer. There's no doer. Because the only doer that there is a thought up doer. You know, the only one who you consider to be the action figure, right? The one you consider to be the action figure is the body, isn't it? The body is how, is what's behaving, right? But without identifying with the body and without believing that you are the body, right? The action figure is God. The action figure is just what's happening. It's non-dual. And its behavior, if the behavior of the action figure is not a function of thinking, right, then its behavior will be natural. Right? You'll behave naturally in response to what's happening. But if the behavior is a function of thinking, your behavior will be reactive, right? You'll be perceiving what's happening as a thought. You'll be perceiving what's happening as a pattern of thinking, right? And that pattern of thinking will be a distortion. It'll be a dream reality. And because it's a distortion and it's a dream reality, your behavior will be consistent with that. Your behavior will be consistent with what you take to be true. If you take yourself to be separate from everybody else, your behavior will be consistent with that. If you take yourself to be separate from life and separate from the world, then the only mode of operation available to you is survival, isn't it? If you take yourself to be separate from other human beings and separate from life and separate from the world, the only mode of operation available to you is to survive, isn't it? Yeah, because constantly you're dealing with a situation that's outside of your control. Other people's behavior, other people's cars when they're driving, the weather, the body, right? Disease, COVID, all the factors that are perceived to be part of the outside world that you're dealing with put you in a position of trying to get through it. That's why people talk that way. I'm trying to get through this day, trying to get through this week, this year, this life. And if you succeed, where will you be? If you succeed in getting through with this life, where will you end up? That's the cosmic joke, right? Because no matter what you think, the truth is still true, right? No matter what you believe, the truth is still true. So you can think you're your body, you can think you're the body, you can think you're the personality, right? You can think you're a separate self, right? But while you're busy paying attention to that and living in that dream, the truth is still true, right? The truth is still true. So you were never threatened. The opportunity that life presented you with is always available. All you have to do is allow yourself to recognize the fact that the thought process is an interpretation, and that interpretation is based on survival, it's based on conditioning, and it is very, very limited. And it is incapable of producing well-being. It's incapable. It's impossible. As long as you consider yourself to be what you're not, you cannot experience well-being. It's impossible, right? Because that's like you're being a ghost. You're not real. Ghosts can't experience anything. Yeah.
Is thinking always a past and future is what we refer to thinking?
In a sense it is, because it is, first of all, it happens after reality, right? It's not simultaneous. It happens after reality, right? And it's based on memory. And the thoughts that arise are based on previous experiences. The thoughts that arise are based on material that is in the memory of the brain that will be pulled up to survive. It'll be pulled up to survive, right? The way it does that is whatever is happening, right, comes in through the senses, gets read by the brain, gets processed through the survival mechanism, right? And then you behave. And when you behave, the behavior that you behave, right, will be a survival behavior, whether it really is or not. Because it's a dumb machine. That are behaviors, after that behavior you were still here, so according to the program, that behavior caused you to survive. Most of the time it didn't. People say that after practicing being awake and paying attention, their mind gets quieter, because there's less shit that comes up. The stuff that comes up starts getting realistic, right? So the stuff that comes up, like if there is a real threat to survival that comes up, right? And then you feel the fear and you respond to that threat, right? That will stay. And you want it to stay. So it's kind of like it's a process in which you're, there was back in the day, there was a guy named Harvey Jackins that came up with a thing called reevaluation counseling. Right? This is about 40, 50 years ago, and I happened to study that. And what he was saying in reevaluation counseling is continually reevaluate what's occurring in your mind to determine whether or not it's real. Continual practice reevaluating it, and as you reevaluate it and see that it's not real, you don't continue to be involved. You don't speak it, you don't act it, you see it for what it is and you let it go. If you keep practicing that, right, it will start to become second nature or natural. That's called the natural way of living, right? To be what you are naturally is to be what you are before thought. Yeah? To be what you are naturally is to be what you are before thought. Like when you were a baby, right, there was no thought. You were in a natural state of being when the baby was the form, right? You were in a natural state of being, right? And then thought occurs. Around 2 years old, thought starts to occur, right? And there's an identification with thought. And then something that's not natural starts to happen, called identifying with something that's not real. That's unnatural, to identify with something that's unreal. However, it's a double-edged sword. See, this is the thing this is the part that you really have to get it complete, right? The fact that we think is a blessing. It's the grace of God. The thought activity is a blessing. It's the grace of God. Without thought, what would your life look like? Without thought.
That you can live without thought. Awareness sees everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I missing?
Well, the thing about it is that without thought, everything would be the same except you wouldn't be there. Right? Without thought, you would have no life. you would have no world. You would have no future. You would have no past. You would have nothing, right? So you'd be like my dog. That's why dogs are happy, because they don't think. But the thing about it is the non-dual experience is available even with thought, right? It's available even with thought if you see thought to be what it is, which is thought. It's not reality. You know, when you are asleep at night, when the body's sleeping, right, and you're in deep sleep, right, and you go into REM sleep and you start to dream, right, you're in that world. You're in that world. You're feeling what the person in that world feels. You're seeing what the person in that world sees, and it's very real, right? It's so real that your nervous system, even though you're sleeping, your nervous system is reacting to what's happening in the dream, and that's being produced by the mind, right? Then you wake up. When you wake up, right, it takes a couple of minutes tops before that's gone, totally gone. Right? And now you're in this, right? Now you're in this. And this, and the this that you're now in is another dream. Because it's being produced by the mind the same way as the dream did when the body was asleep. How is it being produced by the mind? Through thinking. Animals and human beings are all innocent. They're completely innocent. The only difference between an animal and a human being is the human being will justify its insanity. Anything that's false, if it's looked at closely, can't stand up to inspection. It can't stand. That's why inquiry is such an important part of the spiritual process. Inquiry. What's inquiry? Asking questions. Is it real? Is it true? That's what inquiry is. You know, and is the self that I took myself to be real? That's self-inquiry. You know, is the self I took myself to be real? Well, how do I answer that question? Well, I look to see what does the evidence say, right? The evidence say the only reality that produces the existence of the personality is a thought process. Right? And that thought process is not real. So upon inspection, upon inquiry, if you focus, if you look closely, just like if you look closely at the body with a high-powered microscope that could see down at the particle level, you would see there's nothing here. The only reason it appears that there's something here is because our perception is very limited. You know? We can only see things within a certain spectrum of light, right? And so within that limited perception, we're seeing the body, right? But if you looked at this body with a high-powered microscope that could see down further and closer and closer and closer, you get to nothing. There's nothing there. So that's the reality of it. See, the body is an appearance, right? But the reality of it is there's nothing there. If you look closely, there's nothing there. It's an appearance.